He thought his wealth could protect him from everything, even from the people he passed on the street. So when a black woman walked by his luxury car, his first instinct wasn't kindness. It was fear. He hit the lock button, sealing himself away behind tinted glass. But in the next few seconds, something happened that no amount of money could prepare him for. What unfolded didn't just challenge his prejudice, it shook his entire world. Because sometimes the people we fear the most are the ones destined to save us. Jonathan Pierce was the kind of man who had everything. At just 52, he was the CEO of a billion-dollar company, with a mansion perched high above the city, and a lifestyle most could only dream of. Every detail of his world was polished, protected, and carefully controlled. He drove through life in a sleek black car, leather seats hugging him like a throne, tinted windows shielding him from the chaos outside. To many, he was untouchable, a man who never had to think twice about safety, about judgment, about survival. But beneath the surface of that luxury was something else, a quiet fear he never admitted. A fear of people who didn't look like him. Years of subtle prejudice, unchecked assumptions, and whispered warnings had shaped the way he moved through the world. It wasn't something he saw as racism, at least not in his mind. To him, it was just being careful. That's why, on an ordinary afternoon, while stopped at a light in the downtown district, his hand instinctively reached for the lock button when he saw her. A young black woman, no older than his own daughter, walking along the sidewalk with a book tucked under her arm. She wasn't threatening, not in the slightest. But in his mind, years of bias painted her differently. And in that single, almost invisible action, the click of a lock, he set into motion a moment that would unravel everything he thought he knew about power, trust, and humanity. The light turned green, but Jonathan hesitated. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, then back to the sidewalk where the young woman walked with her head slightly lowered, clutching her book. Something about her lingered in his mind. He tried to shake it off, pressing the accelerator, yet the moment clung to him like a shadow. 2 blocks later, fate forced their paths together again. As he slowed near an intersection, he spotted her in the crosswalk. Only now, there was something different. Panic. She stumbled, her gaze darting over her shoulder as if someone was following her. Jonathan's instinct was to look away. This wasn't his problem. He had meetings, calls, and a life carefully built to avoid messy entanglements. But when she tripped and nearly fell, clutching her side, he felt a pang of conflict stir inside him. Then he saw it, a group of men trailing behind her, their voices carried, sharp and mocking, growing louder as they closed the gap. The woman quickened her pace, clutching her book like a shield. The men laughed. One of them shoved her shoulder, sending her staggering toward the curb. Jonathan gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles whitening. Every part of him screamed to drive away. After all, wasn't this the very reason he locked his doors? To keep himself removed from situations like this. But there was no denying what he saw. Cruelty, intimidation, injustice playing out in broad daylight. And for the first time, he couldn't just hide behind glass. His chest tightened. Memories of his daughter, Megan, rushed in. Her walking home from college, her late nights at the library, her texting him to say she was safe. What if it were her being cornered on the street? What if someone else looked away? Jonathan's heart pounded as he pulled to the side of the road. For a moment he sat frozen, wrestling between fear and conscience. He had built his entire life around control, but this was slipping beyond his comfort. He cracked the window just enough to hear the men's laughter grow crueler, the woman's footsteps quicken. The sound pierced him, and then it happened. One of the men grabbed her arm, yanking her book from her hands and tossing it to the pavement. She cried out, stumbling back as the others circled in. Jonathan's hand hovered over the lock button again, but not to shut her out this time. It was a decision point, one that would shatter the illusion of his safety forever. Jonathan flung open his car door, the slam echoing across the street like a challenge. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about boardrooms or stock prices. He was thinking about the terrified young woman surrounded by men twice her size. His voice cracked through the air, sharp and commanding, the kind of tone he once used to silence entire rooms. The men turned, smirking at him, mocking the millionaire in his tailored suit stepping out of a luxury car. But Jonathan didn't back down. His pulse thundered in his ears as he marched forward. The woman's eyes locked onto his, wide and desperate. In that instant, something shifted. He saw not just her fear, but his own reflection in it. The fear he had fed for years, the prejudice that had kept him locked away in comfort, now crumbled in the face of raw injustice. One of the men lunged, squaring up to him, but Jonathan's shout was louder than his fear. He demanded they back off, his body trembling but resolute. For a tense moment, the air thickened with the threat of violence. Then headlights appeared, another car slowing, a passerby pulling out a phone, recording. Silence fell, broken only by the woman's ragged breaths. Her book lay in the gutter, its pages torn and dirty. Jonathan bent down, picking it up carefully, brushing the dust from the cover before handing it back. She clutched it to her chest, her eyes shimmering with tears. In that moment, standing on the cold pavement, Jonathan realized the lock he had pressed earlier wasn't just on his car. It was on his heart, his mind, his entire view of the world. And tonight, for the first time, that lock had been broken. Jonathan drove the young woman home that night. The ride was quiet, but not uncomfortable, just heavy with everything unspoken. She held her book tightly, as though it was more than just paper and ink. It was a piece of her dignity restored. When they reached her small apartment building, she turned to him and whispered a soft, "Thank you." It was simple, but it carried a weight that pierced through the walls he had built around himself. He sat in his car long after she disappeared inside, staring at the dimly lit street. For the first time, he began to question the life he had lived so far. The instinct to lock doors, to keep people out, to let fear masquerade as wisdom. He realized how blind he had been, how prejudice wasn't just in hateful words, but in quiet actions, in subtle judgments, in the silence of doing nothing. The incident spread quickly. The video a passerby had taken went viral, showing a powerful man stepping out of his luxury car to defend a young black woman against harassment. But for Jonathan, the real story wasn't about public praise. It was about what changed inside him that night. He understood that humanity cannot thrive behind glass, locked away from those who need us most. And so, the man who once lived to protect his wealth began to live for something greater, using his influence, his platform, and his voice to fight the very prejudice he once carried in his heart. Because sometimes, the most powerful change begins not with grand speeches, but with the quiet breaking of a lock. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Reflect on the locks we carry in our own lives, and what it would take to break them. Every voice matters, and every story has the power to change hearts. If you believe stories like this need to be heard, make sure to like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories that shine a light on truth and justice.